freaking medic's a spy. We got a spy. Unfreaking touchable. Ah, crap.
Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to Show X Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado, but spending way too much time in the Howling Abyss instead of Summoner's Rift. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to ShowX today on twitch.tv VTW ShowX. You're listening live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 19th of July in 2020. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Happy to have you here. Ken, welcome today, sir. Good to see you. And Todd, welcome again, coming back to the show. We love having you on as well. How are you guys doing today?
What up? What up? I would just wanna. I don't want to start the show off on like a downer note, but I question the advertising of the Open
Oh,
because it says, Wayne, that you're mostly from Colorado, but we all know that you bleed corn.
so it's a weird. Hey, it depends on how you base my history.
You secrete corn, and it's such a massive way. Like, listening to corn grow at night must sound like Beethoven to you.
Hey, so while I will admit that I support my family's, my mother's side of my family's history and background of farming corn in Nebraska, although going back further, doing cattle, hogs, things like that in the repertoire, I myself only barely ever partook. And I am even to a point today where I'm against, in many ways, not the entire corn industry, but the overuse of corn in the United States.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like high fructose corn syrup, I think could really be done better and differently.
Sure.
So I still have my background. I'm still a fan of the Huskers and things like that. But I also have to freely admit, I have now lived in Colorado longer than everywhere else I have in my life combined.
Okay.
But I'm not a native.
Yeah,
so that's that weird thing.
I'm from a backwater town in Scotland, and I spent, you don't want to define yourself by where your childhood is. You want to define yourself by where you choose to be, right? That's more important. Surely.
Well, and on those lines, though,
you can't escape where you're from.
You can't
escape where you're from, Ken. We all know where Sheepcoof, Scotland is.
I'm not against Scotland. I'm against the town I'm from, because we
all know.
Well, because now I'm assuming, Todd, though.
I mean, it's not like I could talk from a position of moral superiority.
Well, no, because you still
in a fire patch in Wisconsin.
So. I was going to say, you still bleed cheese, right? You still bleed cheese, Todd, don't you?
I mean, that's three doors down from Cowshoof, Wisconsin. Like, I'm not speaking from a position of moral superiority. I just thought that that the Open had a little bit of false advertising in it. That's all.
Hey, I will say it is
an incredibly unrepresentative group of people on the show, aren't we? We're just not we're not what our listeners are. I mean, Todd here buggered off to Europe, and I'm from Scotland, which is a weird thing compared to I think I'm probably the only other person who's actually from Europe that actually partakes in our community here actively, and Pusser, I guess. Wayne, you're probably you're the normal one here. You're the one who's like a standard American who's not like running away to Europe or from there.
Whoa. I don't know if I identify with trying to categorize me as a standard American. That is a very loaded term these days. Remember, I'm the one who's absolutely against the shortened term Merca. That I think that is like the worst thing to ever come out of the United States. Yeah. And I'm still the one who's trying to portray things as saying, I'm from the United States and a citizen of the United States. I'm not just an American, because that is a very broad category that includes North and South America, as Copy loves to remind us and such whenever we talk on the show about, hey, this is an American release of this game. And she's like, no, it's not. We can't get it in Canada. I'm like, true.
European release of this.
Everybody calls the USA America. It's just the way it is.
But that's what I'm fighting against. I'm trying to be honest with my words. And so I try to say I'm a U.S. citizen, not just American. And I hate American. Hate.
Good job, Wayne. Actually, you brought up something really, really funny. When the Mistress of Giggles and I first got together, one of the things we talked about was our family heritages. And Wayne, I know that you know this. Ken, you may know this too, but in America, it's very common for us to talk about our family heritage in terms of where we come from in Europe.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Ken comments on this all the time.
Well, so and my family, like we've done my family history on my mom's side of the family back to the point where they came across from Germany, right? So my mom's side of the family is almost entirely German. And so when I was having this conversation with the Mistress of Giggles, right, I mentioned to her that I'm half German. And she said, "Oh, great, where in Germany did you grow up?" And I'm like, no, not like that. Like my family comes
It's
from Germany,
the
and so she goes, "Oh, so you're totally American?" I
yeah,
was like, "Well, yes, true. That's
Todd.
correct."
I have met so many, especially Uber drivers, taxi drivers, and people who work in Walmart and Target and stuff who I chat to, random Americans. And when they're like, "Hey, you've got a weird accent. Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Scotland." They're like, "Oh, I'm Scottish too." And I'm like, "Oh, are you? What part of Scotland are you from?" And they go,
Yeah,
"Ah." Yeah,
yeah,
it's because of the I guess the shortened history of that is the U.S., right? I think I think it's hard to identify as just American. I have not actually met a single American who does. Now that I think about it, other than yourself, Wayne.
I mean,
I say,
European Americans, I would say, as a rule, don't, right? Like we kept, and that's the thing about Americans from European descent is that by and large we kept our uh, old world traditions.
Mm.
For a while, it's not like I celebrate anything German anymore, but like my grandparents did.
okay.
Yeah.
But all kinds of things that would be somewhat traditionally German, and as the generations have rolled on, we've gotten farther and farther away from that. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, it's fascinating because like I think America was originally settled on the idea of escaping lots of what was British and otherwise European traditions, and to some respect, in particular, the the separation of church and state was one of the large ones, right? One of the most
Ah,
important things, and it's so funny that and escaping a two-party system as well, and it's just
we are so
it's
based
just
on
so funny to
everything
say that now.
British. The United States is founded on British traditions. With it's in my opinion, it's the United States is similar to traditional Catholics versus Protestants, and some of the other type where the tweak is just a slight like one main rule that they either got rid of or
Yep.
adjusted, and otherwise it's basically the same thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just fascinating to think about, isn't it? Because that's why to this day why Americans define themselves by their existing heritage. And I think it might also be part of the reason why people ask in vaguely racist manners of where are you from though? Yeah, I know you're not American. Where are you from? When they're asking somebody of African American heritage,
oh,
I
Ken,
think it's partly racism, but I think it's also partly they
in that
identify
case,
European as well.
Ken, I guess I can't necessarily disagree with you. I also think you don't need to or should. I don't know what the right word is in that case, but you can't underestimate the necessity of the American to make small talk. And so where are you from is the sort of 1A piece of small talk. Like how are you doing is number 1. Like hey, how you doing? Is like part 1 of small talk, and then part 1A is where you're from if you don't know somebody that well.
Sure, but I think the problem is when people are like, "Where are you from?" Right, and you're like,
Yeah.
I was born in I don't know, like Minnesota." It's like, no, but where are you from really? Even though you've been in America your entire life, you've never been anywhere else, and they say, "Where are you from really?" That's where it starts to get a bit
Yeah,
edgy, right?
okay.
That's the racist part.
So that's a transition away from small talk into something more heinous, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Like I tried to do this with a cab driver in Germany, uh, like 18 months ago, and just started making small talk in a cab. And he just looked at me like I don't understand English, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, dude. No small talk." And like I've just learned to shut up in cabs now
Yeah.
when I'm in
Interesting.
Europe, especially if I go to the continent itself.
Yeah. Most Europeans are not particularly chatty in that sense.
Yeah.
Scots are. Scots can be pretty friendly, I think, but a lot of Europeans are like, why are you talking
So,
to me?
we'll tie this thread off, and then we can do like geeky things. But my first visit to Norway, the Mr. Giggles and I were up at like 11:30 at night, and it was still light out.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
she's like, "Hey, I want to go get candy." So we went down to the gas station, which is the only thing open at 11:30 at night in Norway.
Sure.
And I walked in, and there's nobody else in the store or in the gas station except the guy behind the counter. And we found what we were looking for, and I walked up to the guy in the counter and did what I would do anywhere in America, be like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he looked at me like I was from another planet, as if I had an extra appendage or extra sight organ, like 3 eyes or 4
Well,
hands.
clearly there's something wrong with you.
Yeah,
Is this
like
guy
like
okay?
I had violated some bit of like a Norwegian code. It's like, no, we only greet each other by banging our swords on our shields or something. Like,
I've experienced the opposite here. Like I'll often go to the store, I'll just have my headphones on and be ignored, and the person will start talking to me, and I'm like, why are you talking to me? I was like, well, I'm like, I usually the first time I went like this, I went, what? Like what? What do you want? What? And they're like, sorry, and I was like, okay, and I was like, that was a really weird interaction, and then Ken Features explained to me afterwards. I think he was trying to talk to you. I was like,
Yes.
he actually went to chat. I see.
yes, small talk.
I
Very
say,
important piece of Americana that is unique.
and to add to that, though, I think a lot of it's based, I don't know, because it's such a cultural nuance that we are brought up in. I think we are often compelled to in the US because I don't know if it's just a lack of comfort in silence or like that little bubble of just my experience, especially I'd say, Todd, for you and I, kind of a Midwestern aspect, because from the Midwest, I think there's a huge press to be friendly to the community and people around you. Drive down the road and wave at people coming the other direction and things like that.
Yeah.
That maybe is different in larger cities. I didn't grow up in anywhere like Chicago, New York, or something where I feel like that bubble contracts and people are less likely to acknowledge each other because there's so damn many people.
Right.
But it's something I'm used to, and I tend to feel some compulsion to at least say like, "Hey, how's it going?" To people in general, and it's something that set me apart. I think when I did go visit Mog in Norway the one time, that when I was running amok by myself in Ilesund, it was like I was just wandering the streets, and if I passed someone, I was saying, "Good afternoon. Hey, how's it going?" And just wandered by, and I had people stop and go like, "Where are you from?" And
yeah. They probably thought you were trying to like solicit something, or like I don't know, you were trying to sell them a watch or something.
Well, the nice thing is it came back in a good fashion, because I remember the very first gentleman that stopped with me. I was walking along kind of the bay, overlooking the waterfront, and he just kind of stopped and was like, "Whoa, where are you from?" And I was like, "Where do you think I'm from?" And he swore I was a Canadian or something initially, but after we got introduced, he was like, "Do you have a minute? I'd love to talk to you." I was like, "Sure." And we sat down on a bench right there, and we had almost an hour-long conversation because he was so intrigued to hear an American and a U.S. citizen's perspective of like our own systems. So he asked about like how voting and elections work in the U.S., which was great for me because he also gave his perspective of what he thought it was until I explained it. And I always share there's the one moment where he said, "So wait, basically, his distillation of what we discussed, the person with the most money wins." And I got stuck.
That's pretty accurate.
I got stuck there because I was like, I mean, no, but that has a lot of influence with it. Like, it does make a huge difference. It's not just who spends the most will win, but if you don't spend a whole lot, you can't even compete. And so there was like this, it took me a second to digest. I was like, ooh, from an external perspective, you're not wrong. But can I give you a little nuance? It was really interesting. I actually really enjoyed that interaction, but it came across that he was instantly aware that I wasn't a local, even though English is basically the second language in Norway, right? And
Yep, absolutely.
And so it caught me off guard, but it was really great timing. In that area, everyone was super friendly.
Yep.
So yeah, I've
Anyway,
definitely
to answer
seen
your
this.
question, Wayne, yeah, I'm doing good, thank you.
Is that how this started?
Yeah,
Well,
he said, "How you guys doing?"
well, and you got into kind of like, oh, that reminds us of. I actually have almost a question to lead off because it's from conversation I had real quick. So I'm just going to jump in because I still like that I got the drop-ins for it, and say we're going to jump in with a little bit of
functional deviations.
And as just kind of our topic to bring up to you guys, our curiosity, this came from me hanging out with Laser Lemon this weekend in a discussion we had this morning. And in that discussion, it was me talking about some of my excitement for some of the games coming out and things like this that I know I'm going to want to acquire. And I'm not sure how much time I'm going to spend in because separate issue, I only spend so much time on any given activity right now. I haven't found one I've dove into. Like I said, I have a whole nother discussion to have about that in the future. This one, though, a question to you guys and to the audience as a whole. Is there anything you do or have taken from both directions here, gaming and applied to real life / lessons and activities you do in real life that you apply to gaming? And
I think that's a really tough question because video games are largely transferable, have a lot of transferable skills in terms of logic, reaction times, and it also depends on what type of games you're playing, right? There's actually been psychological studies which show that there's a lot to be gained from certain types of games. Like
so here's the key.
Games, you learn a lot.
I will phrase this a little more specifically. That you do with purpose, that you like actively say, I am taking this and transitioning it one direction or another. Not something that you do is kind of just, it happens to fit with the way that you think or the way that you act, like taking, and I know some examples, or I could speak to like you can with Factorio and such, that you could see some more direct connection. And I'll let you discuss that. Yeah. But it's where it's not just that because I think this way in life, I play these games, but more as an example that I gave, because I was struggling with answering the question properly, was a lot of it I do, and it's second nature to me, right? It's things I find myself drawn to, but one that I've actually put together as a skill I've put into a game and taken out of has been around racing games and driving simulators. That I use those as ways to perfect the concepts of driving to a certain precise skill that I don't always get to do in regular day life, but it does inform how I drive. Ways of paying attention to other traffic, how I might corner in some cases when I brake, things like that, especially if I'm trying to be economical with my use of brakes or with gas efficiency, things like that, that I have also tweaked and brought into driving simulators and racing games about how I take corners and how I accelerate and how I brake and things like that. That's just like one example of things I've done. And the discussion started from a discussion of me playing and loving flight simulators. And I'm really excited for Microsoft Flight Simulator coming out next month. Like, I am so jonesing and can't wait for it. It just looks phenomenal. Lemon Laser challenged me saying like, okay, but you enjoy the simulator. Are you ever going to be a pilot? Kind of thing. And a level of like, am I taking the skills and what I'm doing practicing in Flight Simulator to actively applying it somewhere in real life? And that was kind of where this discussion continued.
I think, like I said, I think that really does remove a lot of the nuance from what you gain from video games. I think actively having it's like doing a puzzle, right? Like doing I don't know, like a crossword puzzle. Does it directly help you in your life? No. Like you don't find yourself unable to open a door unless you do a crossword puzzle very often, right? That hardly ever happens in real life. But you do find yourself being able to, be more nimble with your mind and your ability to, just think logically. Right.
But I would argue beyond the thinking things from a direct application of a crossword puzzle would also potentially be vocabulary, expanding your vocabulary and understanding of usage of words that you can apply to real life. It's one of the reasons I appreciate Words with Friends, that I play Scrabble to a degree, is I start seeing some words that I didn't realize were words and combination of things. I'm like, huh. And it's where in addition, I've signed up for a few word things that actually send me like a word of the day that give me a definition and stuff just to increase my vocabulary. But that's where I'm wondering. And an example, reading from chat, and this from Hando, specifically, or where was it? I think. So I'm seeing, back up to the chat of like Hando saying, wow, taught him how to better network in real life. skills translation for group activities and multiplayer and things like that. And those are some of the examples I actually got from Lemon Laser directly. So that's where I'm kind of reaching out to you guys. Do you purposefully or actively translate skills between how you work at some challenge in a game, be it working with people or solving a puzzle, to things that you may have experienced in a game that you're like, wow, that really worked well, and then you took that skill and tried it in real life? Todd, do you have any examples or thoughts that you've done?
Well, so the trouble is, how do we separate skills that were gleaned during my education versus skills that were gleaned during my job as an engineer versus skills that were gleaned because I play video games?
Well,
right? Because they're all tied together very closely.
And I would agree.
So problem solving and pattern recognition permeate all three.
Yes.
Right? So for one mathematical example, the difference of two perfect squares.
Okay.
Right? If you're gonna factor a polynomial that's the difference of two perfect squares, and you can recognize that pattern quickly, you can do that factoring very easily. And that bleeds through into calculus and all kinds of other advanced mathematics. But recognizing that pattern also helps you recognize when a requirement is a good requirement.
Okay.
If we're talking about a direct application to engineering. And pattern recognition is also really important in gaming. Like one of the games that I'm playing right now is very reliant on not only identifying a type of enemy, but also the attack pattern that enemy will use in order to maximize the amount of, to maximize the effectiveness in combat or minimize the amount of time that you're fighting that one particular enemy. However you want to look at it as an optimization problem. Speaking of optimization, if we go back to my days delivering groceries, path optimization. Well, because I don't know if you know this, but Google Maps is absolute garbage outside of of cities.
I've absolutely heard you talk about that before. Yeah,
dude, my thesis was on operational research. I have done literature reviews on vehicle routing problems and vehicle routing problems with time windows and such. Google Maps it's one of the most impressive real-world examples that's open to the public, but there are certainly better, more efficient mechanisms out there, no doubt.
And so the route generation application that was used at that job was based off of Google Maps. And I tried to impress upon the person who is responsible for writing those algorithms, it's like you can't use Google Maps because Google Maps is garbage outside of Oslo proper. And I got the, well, the Google Maps is fine for 90% of the routes because 90% of the routes are inside Oslo proper. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't help me when I go out to Pig's Knuckle, Norway, and Google Maps tries to send me down a road that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
To get to a place. Like, am I really supposed to drive down a driveway into a farmer's field and bury my vehicle in the middle of a snowstorm at 11 o'clock at night? That's going to take hours for me to get pulled out, if I can get pulled out at all. And if I can't get pulled out, you're going to have to leave that vehicle there until spring. So anyway, that went nowhere, by the way.
Well, no, I mean, you were giving an anecdote about how certain things that exist that we take advantage of don't work. But now I feel like you were saying that the skills that you have gained or the way that you problem solve, you were able to apply in the real world to optimize your path beyond that constraint.
Oh, sure. So that's one thing. So, if you get off any of the freeways sort of in rural Norway, they're usually sort of the secondary road is done in a sort of a loop style.
Okay.
So there'll be two connections to the main road, and then you will drive off on one of the two, go find the house, and then in whichever direction you're going to you're going next will dictate which direction you go when you leave, but Google Maps doesn't know about any of this. So you're sort of left to just flail about. The other thing I was going to talk about is estimation, right? That's a math skill that they don't teach real heavily, but if it's 9 o'clock at night and I put an address into the scheduling or the map app, and it tells me it's a 40-minute drive one way to get to this address, and I have 8 deliveries left at 9 o'clock at night, it can't possibly be a 40-minute drive. So that, which means that the map app is wrong, and I have to go someplace else to figure out where the hell I'm supposed to go.
Okay.
So there's a couple of examples.
So with that, though, are you finding that in your real world application, were any of those things that you had that you can identify as things you practiced in a game or something like that? Or one of the aspects to my question, I think, is something that you realized you first learned or became aware of as a specific algorithm to solve a problem, or a specific approach to solving a problem that you gained either in the real world or a game, that you actively noticed that same problem in the other instance and said, hey, that thing I learned here, let me try to apply it here and see if it works the same. So are there any points where you might have seen that?
I think all of that stuff is math skills, and because video games are math, I don't know how you would distinguish between a skill that was garnered because I'm a math guy and a skill that was garnered because I play video games. Like, No,
that's fair for you there. And this is something I think that I agree in, that I feel like that's something I do in most of my life, that it's just kind of a natural, they blend, and then some levels of, I know I'm probably better at this thing because I did it so often over here versus me directly doing it. And part of this discussion came up because Lemon specifically showed examples where she took something she learned through gaming. One of her examples was doing multiplayer games like MMOs, and how she was able to figure out ways to work with different groups, especially random groups and such, and provide interactions with members of the group to make the success of the team better in a dungeon and things like that. And then upon identifying and analyzing what it was she did different to other experiences that created success, turned around and recognized a similar problem in her work environment and said, hey, that thing that I honed from playing multiplayer games with other people as a skill, I'm going to specifically apply it to this work situation and see if I get similar results. And so for her, it's something that I was struggling to be able to see in the same way, is that she is very analytical and very self-analyzing in that she kind of does retrospect on her own actions. And in doing so is trying to level up as a whole, trying to get better about all things she does. And so it just was an interesting thing she challenged with me, because most games I usually take from the sense of, I just play for fun and just enjoy certain aspects. But there are things I would say that I have improved upon, both in real life and gaming. I just don't think I spend enough, or that I not necessarily spend enough, but that it is in my nature to identify specifically what it is I learned or did differently in one situation versus another, and then specifically chose to try to adapt or change a situation based on something I learned. Like for me, it's more like I just kind of do it because in general, it seems like the better idea, but I don't maybe label it or categorize it in such a way that I can pick from a library of things I've learned and say, yep, that's what I should do here.
I think I can point to the entire, well, not entire. I think I can point to maybe like 70% of all computing scientists who ever go to university, or any programmers or anything like that. A large majority of them played video games beforehand, right? A large number of them were already into computers because they'd started playing video games. Some of them are PlayStation gamers. A lot of them are PC or Mac or Linux. But a lot of them are into video games, and they realized that, you know, there's a lot of logical stuff that you can pick up through video games that can be applied to computing science and programming in general, software engineering in general. You find that a lot of things that, well, like games are made by programming, right? So I think innately you end up adding in logical elements to video games because of that, and it means that there's this transferable skill. You program something that helps teach other people to transfer some kind of programming knowledge to other people innately, right? Regardless of what the game is, you're learning some kind of if-then logic system, right?
Okay.
If this, then that. So I think you can quite easily say that a large reason that so many people are into tech and into computing science and programming these days, and you could also then therefore argue why AI is advanced so much and such, is largely because people have been inspired by how much fun they have with video games and picked up a lot of skills by playing video games. For myself personally, like you mentioned briefly before, Wayne, I'm working on a project just now with four of my colleagues. On a competition that we're doing for an artificial intelligence conference next year, where people are going to be able to make their own AIs to try and control Factorio and do some real world optimization simulation inside Factorio. And that's going to be, and it's a really tough project, and it's really fun, and it's all very, very focused on the video game. But what's going to come out of this isn't about a video game. It happens to be a simulator, right? So it's an existing suite of tests that you can run an AI on. That's the good thing about video games. They're already standalone and ready to test, right? You can just throw an artificial intelligence at them in theory if you can connect them up nicely, and that's what we're doing. So for that alone, it's actually helping my career directly, be having played this video game. If I hadn't played Factorio, I wouldn't know about it, and I wouldn't be working on this project. That's a direct and clear output from video games for me.
Okay. But if nothing else, I'm wondering, I mean, do you guys at least, because honestly, it sounds like the three of us are similar in a lot of ways of how we approach situations. I was somewhat thinking towards you, Todd. I remember a lot of discussions of how you optimized gameplay that you did in things like Final Fantasy VII and your choice of spell rotations and things like that. And just and I wasn't sure if even in situations like that, if that was a conscious decision you did based on maybe an algorithm you were aware of for optimization in the past, or if it's just as you played the game, you observed things that you found more optimal and thus tied it together and just applied it in the game's like its own self.
Sure. I mean, so there's an aspect of trial and error, right? Back then it was much more trial and error, and eventually with the gaming, between gaming magazines and the internet, eventually you found out that Big Guard was a thing. And Final Fantasy did take the Final Fantasy case more specifically.
Okay.
And so there would be no reason for you there would be no reason for you to ever not to get it, except to prove a point.
Okay.
Big Guard is just that powerful. It's also one of those cases. I love the Big Guard example because it's one of those cases that really showcases that the mechanics part of video games, that if you don't know about the mechanics of video games, you're losing out on huge power upgrades.
Okay.
So just to highlight the importance of mechanics. Nowadays, more modern examples, they handhold. Software game developers are much more handholdy about the mechanics nowadays.
Yes.
So they'll tell you that attack X works better against enemy Y in situation Z, so that everybody sort of has access to that stuff, whereas the only way you would know about Big Guard is if you had done it by accident or had read about it someplace beforehand.
Yeah, caught it somehow external or through personal experience.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So
I think, like I said, I think the vast majority of skills we pick up from video games are transferable, and some things are really tough to sort of describe. But I think it's the same you can argue with like reading. Like when you read a book, I think most people nowadays would agree that it's beneficial to read a book, right? You learn more about the world, you learn more about other people's perspectives. You get all that stuff in video games too. The only difference is the video games are also interactive, right? You also get to interact with these elements, and you get to make decisions, and then you get to hone your own abilities in a more direct manner that you don't get from books. I'm not trying to say books are better or anything. They obviously are different, but there's some clear distinguishing elements for the two. But there's a lot of overlap as well.
So then one of my questions that also kind of came from this discussion, and then we'll turn it back to some more of the gaming stuff that's going on right now. But it was another piece of the conversation we had is it, or what do you guys see as a valuation of learning new ideas, things that you might gain from reading books and things like that, if you don't turn around and actively apply them to some aspect of your life? Is it still beneficial? Is it worthwhile to spend a lot of time learning things in general versus learning things that you're going to actively use? You know, or does that matter?
If you don't mind me going first, Todd, I would just argue that learning at all is better than not learning. If you're going to sit and watch 16 and Pregnant or whatever the damn channel TV show is called, instead of actually watching something that has some kind of productivity, it's better to learn something that's irrelevant than to learn nothing at all, I guess is my point.
Todd?
Yeah. So I don't think there's such a thing as trivia or trivial learning.
Okay.
Like there are factoids that you can garner that will be useful in discussions down the line and can help you in your argumentation process. If you're inclined to argue a specific point, in either in a private conversation with somebody or in a public forum. One of the things I like to do is use the other side's data when you can find it. That's fun. That's fun for me because one of the things that will often happen when you're trying to make in a sort of debate style argumentation format is to impugn the data, right? And so if you use the other side's data, they can't impugn their own data, right? Because that would invalidate the points that they're making.
Yes.
If they impugn their own data. So that's just one of the things that I like to do in terms of argumentation. But I became fascinated. Here's an example. I became fascinated with the 2008 financial crisis.
Okay.
And I wanted to know how that happened. And I started with the pop culture. I started with the pop culture sort of bits on it. So I watched The Big Short. I watched Too Big to Fail. I watched Inside Job, which was more of a documentary rather than an entertainment film.
Okay.
And then I sort of transitioned into the academia, like listening to some economists that are teaching at university talking about the crisis. And then I also consumed some stuff from, quote, the news media, end quote, and their perspective on it. And trying to cobble together, trying to cobble together a mental framework for just that one event resulted in me picking up a bunch of factoids about loosely related topics that have also been useful in other discussion / debate type of activities in different places.
That's a good point, actually. Is this general learning can be useful not only for the transferable skills that you get from learning to learning random stuff, right? You can by learning something. Okay, learning languages, for example, is not only useful because you can learn to communicate, but you also learn about the transference of ideas, right? You learn about how different cultures consider certain topics, right? And that's a fascinating thing. I think people who know multiple languages can think much more creatively and introspectively than a lot of other people. A buddy of mine is learning Egyptian hieroglyphs right now. And he actually told me this yesterday. It's actually Graham, if you're interested, Wayne.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
he says he's just fascinated by them, and wants to learn them. And I said to him, wow, first of all, I said, is it easy to do that outside of, academia? Like, I imagine you would need to generally have like I don't know, a course for that. That sounds tough. And secondly, I said, well, for what purpose? I mean, I don't mean to look down on him or anything. I'm just saying, like, why? What interests you about it? It seems like such a generally non-useful thing in a day-to-day life, right? Oh, I can read hieroglyphs. Like, oh, that's really cool, but why? Right?
Okay.
Is it your job? No, I'm just generally interested. No, that's what he basically said. He just said he found it fascinating. He likes the fact it's so similar to pictographs in other languages like Chinese and Japanese, and he just finds it all really interesting. And that's his reason. And I think that's fantastic. I think learning for the sake of learning should never be looked down on.
Fair.
In the sciences, there's two broadly speaking, you can sort all of the sciences and all applications of research into two categories, which is stuff that's currently useful and maybe usable in the real world, like viral research, right? Stuff like that's good for making vaccines, clearly, obviously useful. Then you have stuff like extremely theoretical mathematics and physics. It's stuff that's so out there and just based on looking at interesting patterns and stuff that cannot be applied to the real world. In fact, for thousands of years, we've been sitting on this knowledge of what eventually became encryption. When we first looked into prime numbers and were fascinated by them as a species, people started exploring them, and for no reason. There was no particular reason to be interested in prime numbers. There was nothing. It was literally the least useful things we could do with our time, and yet people spent years of their lives looking into it. And I think if you said, I will make our farming 10% more efficient, you'd have a very good chance of getting your research grant. If you said, I have an interesting idea to work with prime numbers, they would say, that seems like a waste of government money, right? Like, generally speaking, theory and research is a hard thing. Like, true theory is a really hard thing to fund because there's no clear usefulness to it. However, we have found now that encryption would not exist without our understanding of extremely previously theoretical mathematics, our understanding of prime number theory. That's been so incredibly useful.
But now, I mean, you're talking about that in a philosophical sense, in general learning sense of the mass, I would say. But for an individual, I guess the question comes up, and you've talked to this about like what Graham's doing and such, just the potential. Like, I would not tell a person, don't learn something just because you're interested, right? But I think what Lemon was kind of bringing up, at least in her own life, was a level of optimization, call it what you will, of like, applying it to real life in her own situation, but trying to learn things she can apply directly and the value she sees in that. And I agree that is very cool, because I know for me, I'm taking from the conversation I had with her, while my nature is to kind of chase whatever I find interesting in the moment, because sometimes it's because I have a problem I need to solve, like putting up critter guards on my solar panels on my roof and how to do it most safely to climb on a roof versus paying someone to just do it for me. I may apply the learning in that moment. If there's other things, I'll just learn because I find it interesting. But I do see value in what she is doing that is in her own way an optimization of life. But if she can focus on activities and how she can learn something and specifically apply it to her life to thus improve. One example being things like investing money in the stock market and things like that, and how she's using some of the mechanisms she's learned in some games about investing early on for growth and how it applies to future reward. But she is taking an approach that I respect, that I don't have as a natural need or thing I've done, but she's focusing on, look, I think I learned this thing here. If I apply it over here, does it work the same? And kind of like where I went, Ken, with what you're doing in Factorio with your AI work, like you're using an active simulation and using the constraints of it to test theories that you have based on the real world and try to bring them back and forth. I think it's similar to that. She's just trying to do it to her own life. And for me, while it's not my nature to do, after having the conversation, I was inspired a little bit that I can't say I will, but initial conversation and even talking with you guys, try to purposefully apply some level of that somewhere. And an example being, and she challenged me a little bit about like playing ranked games in multiplayer gaming, that taking skills I've learned into the real world of dealing with teams and how to deal with situations where you have someone who is against the overall effort of the team or is doing something that is negative, instead of just canceling and running away from the situation or just saying, well, this game's going to suck, trying to take something I've maybe done in real life in a team meeting and actively choosing to apply that mechanic or skill to the gaming world to maybe try to improve that ranked game and work against someone's toxicity and something like that. And I was like, whoa, that is a interesting way to look at problems in gaming and where I'm trying to have fun, and see what a great opportunity to potentially practice real life skills. And so
she's right. In the end, I mean, if we can focus, if you're going to learn something, it's better to learn something practical, of course, right? Generally speaking. However, my only purpose, it's like a ranking order, right? Number 1, learn stuff that's useful. Number 2, learning stuff. Number 3, not learning stuff. Right? So you can spend time doing following that priority list. Is good in the world, right? That's pretty much what I'm getting at.
Well, and like I said, I don't see it as a binary thing. I think you can do scales of all of it. But she did open up my mind to the idea of learning thoughtfully, right? To actually specifically say, here's a skill I'd like to apply in this situation, therefore I'm going to learn that skill. Or vice versa, here's a situation that applies to a skill I've learned. Let me actively choose to try to apply the skill.
I think it's a fascinating suggestion.
It's
my only sort of hesitation in the least would be that this is your leisure time. And if you tried to apply something that you learned in real life in terms of like team building to your leisure time and it goes badly.
Okay.
Are you reducing the utility that you would get out of the leisure time had you not tried it to such a degree that the practicing your real life skill in the context of the game is overcome by the lack of utility in having actual leisureful leisure time?
I think that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. Like, I'm not advocating one side of this over the other. It's a question I would ask myself.
Yeah, no.
And also probably the reason why I don't participate in multiplayer in video games anymore, really, ever.
I can understand.
My opinion is that I recently modified the way I spend a lot of my time, spare leisure time, in that I used to just play video games and that was it. But I've come to realize that I always said in my life I want to read, thousands of books. I want to read all the greats out there. I don't want to have gone through my life and not have read what people would regard the most important books that have ever been written in thousands of years. That would be depressing to me if I didn't do it. So I've been spending a lot more of my time doing something that I deem productive, but I also enjoy. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm reading and I'm sitting there thinking, man, I really wish I could play a video game right now. But sometimes if I give into that, I'll find that, I'll play the video game, I'll be kind of enjoying it, and then afterwards I won't feel fulfilled. Whereas if I actually spend my leisure time doing something that's productive and I enjoy, I do feel fulfilled. So I think it comes down to that for me personally. But again, it depends on the person.
Well, and so I think the tale for me on both of what you guys have stated is that I did bring up that there are times for me where what I need in that moment is just leisure. And in doing so, it's things like I tend to feel productive if I ever put something as a task for a day. I wake up in the morning and say, I want to accomplish this. And I do. Then regardless of almost anything else around what I did that day, if I accomplish that thing, I tend to feel pretty good. But there are times when even when I have planned that, what I need in that moment, my body tells me, my mind tells me, whatever, is to just relax, to do something mindless, to binge a television show for 8 hours maybe, whatever it might be. Because even though I had planned to do something else, my brain and body have told me, no, you need to relax a bit, rest, not think as actively, and so consume something that maybe doesn't require as much critical thought and something to kind of build up and replenish my reserves such that I can be more productive in other areas in the future. And I've had to acknowledge and allow myself to do that and not feel like I somehow missed an opportunity for growth because I wasn't doing something productive. And so for me, that sometimes leisure is just leisure, right? It is just...
It's because we're old, Wayne.
I mean, it changes the scales, right? I might need more leisure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it does.
I mean, that's the truth of life, is that the older you get, you sometimes just need a little more time to recharge, to fix, to heal, and all those things. You know,
You ain't kidding.
I think that age is an inverse energy effect that the younger people are to birth kind of thing, actually draw on the energy of the older. And I always say that for whenever if you've ever babysat someone else's kids or, family members who are much younger, it's amazing how exhausted you could be when all you were doing was trying to interact with them, and yet they seem boundless for energy.
Yeah. Well, and it's really true that nothing sucks the fun out of a room like a millennial, right? So
shut it.
I would say almost I would push that on to the next generation now, to the Zennials.
Yeah, it's the Zoomers now. They're the ones who are young, right? Right. Hey, I'm almost 30 and I'm a millennial.
Yeah, well, I always try to be in truth in advertising thing, because millennials just the term that caught on so big when it was first coined.
My kingdom to get that decade back.
Oh boy. But yes, I try to make sure it's accurate to say Zoomers now or Zennials. No, I thank you guys for indulging in my extending the conversation I had this morning to the show. Because, like I said, I see value across the board in some ways, and it was more me trying to process what I was hearing and the value that obviously I believe Lemon is actually getting from what she's doing, and what my own experience is. Yes.
Well, here's a good point, actually. This is our leisure time. It's Sunday. Nobody here is supposedly not working right now, right? All three of us are here because we choose to be here on our leisure time.
This isn't how you pay your bills?
Wait a minute. You guys get paid for this?
Yeah. God, good me.
This is absolutely what we choose to do with our leisure time, right? But this is productive. You could argue quite easily, I think. It's not, even though we're having a good time and we enjoy it, it's absolutely a productive thing in my eyes.
Oh, yeah. Like, if anyone who missed last week's show, you missed one of the most productive shows we've had on Show X, I think, ever.
We changed the world. We changed the view of the world.
That's right. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy, rumor is that Kathleen Kennedy resigned after she heard the show.
We are changing things one nerd discussion at a time.
Yep. Kevin Feige and Jon Favreau are going to take over, and we're going to get proper Star Wars again.
There you go.
That's not real, people. Like, yeah. I have dreams that start that way, but that's not real.
If you ever find that's truth, just let us know. If we were the show that inspired like Henry Cavill to go build his own PC.
I'm taking all the credit in the world for that. It wasn't WCBS. It wasn't that's world class bullshitters for those that don't know. The Fandom Menace, like not they didn't have anything to do about it. They've been talking about this stuff for years, but our 4-hour foray into the Star Wars cinematic universe is what did it.
That's right. Look at us.
I'm totally taking credit for it.
Oh, no, exactly. No, but I agree with you, Ken, right? It's nice that these kind of things can overlap, right? It doesn't have to be a binary thing of it's either valuable or it's not. That it can actually, sometimes they can blend. And it honestly, I say that because I spend a lot of my leisure time with Lemon, and we just have discussions and very, I'd say, philosophical in a lot of ways of how we truly believe in the world. And I find a lot of value that both from a perspective of relaxing and kind of getting good with the world and spending quality time with a gal I quite appreciate, but also learning and, heaven forbid, exchanging ideas and perhaps growing in what I think. So weird.
Well, a beautiful thing to do with our time. Absolutely.
Yep. Worthwhile.
Ionis in the chat says, Magica taught me to never go too close to cliffs when I'm with my friends.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
That sounds like a dang good life lesson from a game. Especially if Ken is in your group.
I don't know what you're talking about. Every time Magica's brought up, I get blamed. I don't know what you're talking about.
Every time Magica gets brought up, the grin on your face of you reminiscing in your own mind of times you have completely fooked over people in your group for your own entertainment doesn't at all apply.
I've had more triple kills in that game than I have in any others.
Yes, just always friendly fire. It's your fault you were standing in the water when I cast the chain lightning. I don't know why you're blaming me.
I think that might be an exact quote, actually.
Yes. It's such a good
Oh,
game,
it's
though.
magical. Yeah, great. Really good.
Okay. So on this note, mostly because I just crushed a drink in absolutely half to bio, we're going to take a break. We need to come back and we need to talk some games because I know that
start the show at some point.
Right? Well, I know Todd has some games to fill us in on, and so I definitely want to get to those.
This is definitely in ONHBW tradition. We've now spent an hour of our 2-hour time slot and haven't spoken word one about video games yet.
No, we were absolutely talking about how life and games connect. Come on, just no specific games.
Yeah, I'd give it. I'd allow it. I'll allow it.
So with that, we're going to take a break. And in light of I'm totally pandering to Lemon at this point, but I'm going to be playing a song from OC Remix, which is an Elder Scrolls V Skyrim mix called "Those Ink Blots Are Pandas," and got this from OC Remix from the artist Ross Kamet. And so we're going to play that during the break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes after this to continue the conversation and hear some of Todd's insights of some games that he's recently been playing through, because I'm really curious to hear about these since I have not played these games. And so we'll be coming back with that right after this break. But with this, you're watching Show X here on Twitch/VTW Show X. Please share us with all of your friends. We'd love to hear more from you. And if you didn't notice, I did drop a key in the chat earlier because we got a new follow. Thanks to Chris the Gunner for following us as we're doing the show. We like to give out our keys and share to the community our joy of having us grow. So share us wide, share us far on whatever media you follow us on, and we'd love to get more people here to enjoy the show. But we'll be back right after this in about 5 minutes, and we'll see you here soon.
listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for sticking with us, and a big shout out to St. Uther for hosting us as we go into this. Anything we can do to expand the audience, we much appreciate it, because we are here for you. So as much as you guys don't get all the context of what we discussed in the break and how we're solving the world's issues one gaming element at a time, because you guys instead got to hear some music and relax there for a moment, we'll have to bring that up at some future point. But we wanted to come back to the break to specifically talk a little bit about some gaming, because I got a little birdie that basically told me in the head that, Todd, you have some content for us based on some things you've been playing.
2 games, both with the same main mechanic. One that was very obviously designed for the Games Press to say nice things about it and to win awards.
Okay.
And one that was designed to be the best stealth action game since Tenchu Stealth Assassins or the original Metal Gear Solid.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Yep. One of them is The Last of Us 2, and the other one is Ghost of Tsushima.
Okay,
I think that's what you switch. Go on.
I know. I was going to say preemptively, I have thoughts, but I'm very curious to hear yours, Todd.
I'll start with the positive. Ghost of Tsushima is the best stealth action game I have played in probably 15 years.
Okay.
Yep. Oh my God.
What are some of the aspects? Well, could you describe in general for the audience what the game is? Because it's not one I've touched. It's one I was following and aware of, but I have not put my hands on. And to preempt that,
it came out in Norway on Friday.
And this is a console exclusive, right?
PS4.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
That's pretty much why I haven't.
They've been calling it the last Sony exclusive in the PS4 era.
Oh God, I hope. Okay.
Is what they've been calling it. It is gorgeous visually. It's a love letter to Kurosawa films.
Okay.
But to me, because I don't have any context, imagine if Ninja Scroll, the Japanese anime,
love that anime,
given the same treatment that From Dusk Till Dawn was given a couple of years ago, where they took the From Dusk Till Dawn movie and made a
series out of it, which is,
yeah,
I'm assuming is a good series. I haven't actually seen it myself.
I mean, it was like the first season was just From Dusk Till Dawn, the movie stretched out into 10 hours.
Okay.
Or 11 hours, right? So they deep dove a lot of stuff that you, in the context of a feature film, just gloss over, right? So, but it's a love letter to Japanese anime or Kurosawa films. It's got this really dynamic combat system that I've never experienced anything like before.
Okay.
And it's a good old-fashioned revenge. It's a good old-fashioned revenge tale.
Okay.
And it takes place on this island in Japan called Tsushima, and the Mongols have invaded. And basically, you start at the lowest point imaginable. Your uncle is captured by the Mongol general, the army of the Lord in the army of the Lord. That's your uncle has been decimated by the Mongols, and he's been taken captive, and you were left for dead at this battle as the Mongols were making landfall.
Okay.
And so check out those colors. Those colors like that are everywhere.
The kind of autumn scene from the trailer there.
So it's not an autumn scene. That is a forest made up of golden leaves.
Oh,
And they're
wow.
not gold like the element gold, but gold is in like the color.
Gotcha.
So it uses primary colors in the same way that Mirror's Edge did.
Ah, gotcha.
So you know that something kind of important is happening because you'll be riding through a bamboo forest, and then all of a sudden you'll come into this clearing and there's all these white plants around.
Okay.
And so it gives you an indication that something is going on.
Gotcha.
It's just like you've got the ability to do stealth combat. You've also have the ability to do these things called showdowns or standoffs. I'm sorry, standoffs. I always
That's
get that.
very Western. It was a showdown.
No, yeah, showdown would be Western. This is Japan. It's a standoff.
Gotcha.
Where you'll stand off one-on-one with another enemy, and it's sort of a reaction-based quick time event. So based on the reaction of the enemy, like you get a one-hit kill.
Oh, that's very like what was that old
very
PS1
Japanese
game?
Anime.
Well, the PS1 game that did it, the Bushido Blade.
Yes. Very much.
So what you've been telling us so far, this sounds like the premise is this is samurai, Japanese, John Wick.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold.
Pretty much. And you have full, how would I say this? You have full autonomy to do or to progress missions and clear outposts or do these things in whatever way you want to.
So basically, a somewhat open and non-linear approach.
Open world. Yep, it's an open world. It's got the collectibles. It's got the exploration. Like, that's the field that I was thinking about. Like, you're riding through a bamboo forest until you get to that kind of spot, and it just, the whole thing opens up, and there's this field of white flowers.
Okay.
So, and I've just realized I'm watching Twitch while I'm describing what's going on. So this is going to be off by like 30, 40 seconds. So sorry about that.
No, it's a...
yeah, it's just, there are so many things. The use of color, the environments, there are different biomes, the enemy variety. Because it's not just Mongols that you're fighting, you're also fighting bandits, because bandits have taken advantage of the fact that there's no government per se on this island anymore.
Okay.
He's in prison. You know, I've played it most of the day on Friday, and pretty much all day yesterday and today.
So Last of Us 2 was the one that's an exclusive for PlayStation, right?
I think that is 2. Yeah.
Oh, they both are. Okay, sorry.
I guess I don't know. I didn't.
No, these
I
are
didn't do as much research into The Last of Us 2. I came into that one somewhat by accident because the Mistress of Giggles.
Gotcha.
Well, everybody Giggles wanted to play it.
Everybody who played Last of Us 1 is like, that was great. I need to jump on Last of Us 2.
Yeah, kind of. So I can't say enough good about Tsushima. Like there's character progression, but there's no level gating.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Like the later Assassin's Creed games where like I'm level 6 and I could go do this mission, but it's level 8, so I can't. And
gotcha.
The questing in it is very episodic. So a place will show up on your mini map, and you go to where the place is, and you'll talk to a person, and it will start an episode. Okay. And the episodes don't last very long. Like the longest one that I've played probably took me 25, including deaths, probably took me 25 minutes so far. And yeah, it's just like it's hitting to be somewhat inflammatory. It's the one time period that Ubisoft has been ducking all this time.
Interesting.
Like they've done sorry, who does this? Is that THQ? I can't remember. So I'll say Assassin's Creed. It's the one time period that Assassin's Creed's been ducking all this time.
Oh, sorry, Assassin's Creed is Ubisoft.
Is this Ubisoft? Okay.
Yeah.
They should not bother at this point.
It's now been done.
They lack the capability to do it this good.
Okay.
They just can't.
So
with the way that they do Assassin's Creed, no way.
Okay. So you're killing me, Todd, because I love this era and style of game, but because I only own a PS3, I am stuck with that idea of not for me.
So wait until PS5 and get it.
Actually, that is one of those things that's in my mind right now, because why would I buy a PS4 today when I know the PS5 is coming this fall, this year? And why would I get a PS4 when I know that the PS5 is already advertised as essentially will be backwards compatible with all PS4, if not more? So
no, if I were you, I would wait. I would wait and buy the PS5 and then go get this game and play the crap out of it, because I imagine on the PS5 it's going to look even better. And we don't have. It's not like we have a PS4 Pro. Like we have a just PS4, and the game is gorgeous.
Okay,
absolutely gorgeous. So, there's a lot of mechanical stuff to like in it. The stance dancing is fantastic. So you're in the middle of this combat, but the combat is done in such a way that, again, it's like a Japanese anime movie or a Kurosawa film, where you'll have one guy come, once the original shock of combat is sort of over, where you can get swarmed by enemies, like it does happen occasionally. But once sort of that bit is gone, it very much becomes a one-on-one contest, and the enemies will be opportunistic.
Okay.
Like if you focus too much, like one will come at you from the side and attack you.
Nice.
But it is very much like you switch stances to a stance that works well against dudes with shields, and then you beat up on a dude with a shield, and a guy with swords will come and attack you, so you switch stances like in real time, dynamically. You switch stances into the stance that's good against people with swords, and then you fight the sword guy. I mean, you don't have to. It's just...
It's a choice you can do to optimize that moment.
Yeah, exactly. So, wow. Just...
that's exciting to hear.
I am so blown away.
Man.
I've been very tempted by this game. I saw the trailer and I thought, God damn, that looks like The Witcher, but except samurai and prettier. Because as much as I thought The Witcher was very pretty, I did feel like it was kind of lacking on the graphical elements in a lot of ways, because the terrain was all very samey for large swaths of it, but it doesn't look like that for this game.
No, there are... I'm probably going to get this wrong. There are something like 40 different biomes.
Oh, wow.
And each of the biomes, it has a vibrant primary color associated with it. So sometimes it'll be red, and sometimes it'll be white, and sometimes it'll be yellow, and sometimes it'll be purple. Very much like Mirror's Edge that way. Again, the use of color, very reminiscent of the way they used color in Mirror's Edge. And yeah, it's got exploration and collectibles and like I said, progression, but no level gaining. Like I cannot, like I'm blown away with how much I like the game and how good I think the game is.
Have you been streaming it all?
No. I don't have a microphone to go with the PS4, so I couldn't talk. Like it would be sort of gameplay only.
Right.
So no, I haven't really streamed any of it, and I really don't have a way to capture video of it, unfortunately, because that would be pretty dope too. But
yeah, it's one of those games that I'd like to see before making the plunge and spending the money on it, right? Because I know it looks beautiful and everything. I'd like to just make sure that it's something I'd be into.
Yep.
So I do have a question
one,
real quick before we get off of the Ghost one. I do have a question. Did you play it strictly in the, like, I know there are nuances that the developer did to allow people to experience the game how they chose to kind of get some of the aesthetic.
well,
Did you
yeah.
do it in color mode? Did you do it in English mode?
I did not turn on Kurosawa mode.
Okay.
Like, if you turn on Kurosawa mode, it makes the whole game black and white, and then makes the audio, like, washes out the audio to make it, like, old-timey.
That's cool, but that takes away a lot of the work that the artists put into the game.
Well,
right?
You say that.
That's been sort of the thing. Like, this game is a love letter to those kind of movies, so I understand why they put it in there.
Yes.
My opinion is that if you were to turn on that mode and play it in that mode, if you were not a Kurosawa super fan, like, you are taking the vibrant color environment aspect out of it totally. And that would be a disservice to the game to do that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I like that it presents the options, because the other one I know they did, because they have you can do it black and white mode to get that effect. Yep. They also had it where you can do it subtitled, full subtitled, for people who, like me, may prefer to hear the Japanese and read the story. For me, there's a certain authentic aspect to that for me, because I watch so much anime. But for, like, you, Todd, I'm assuming, did you do it in the English mode?
Yeah.
And based on that, was the voice acting just on par? I still presented wonderfully, where there's nothing that pulled you out of it?
Yeah, no, it's been fine.
Awesome.
Totally fine.
No, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I imagine that this black and white mode is, it's great for the super fans, but I think also it's just a very smart marketing gimmick as well, because, it's a simple thing to add in, wash out everything to be black and white and high contrast, and then wash down the audio. Like, that's just a couple of fillers. Like, compared to all the other stuff they've done in the game, and the fact that we're talking about it shows that it's worked, right? So, I from a purely capitalistic viewpoint, that's a very smart decision of them to add.
Yeah, totally. I totally get it, and I could totally see the case for turning the difficulty way down and turning on Kurosawa mode, and, like, doing a playthrough just like that to really sort of revel in that sort of film style.
The aesthetic, that whole feel of, like, this is what got me into loving Japanese samurai movies or something like that.
Sure.
Yep. No, I agree.
Yep.
Okay, I appreciate you indulging me on that aspect of it, because I just knew that was a technical piece of the game and something they did as a purposeful part of it. So, but you're going to transition now to another game that recently came out, which is The Last of Us 2, that you have other opinions on.
Congratulations to Naughty Dog on the avalanche of awards they're going to win.
Okay.
This game was designed with that in mind. This is an all-story, all-environment,
beautiful
fluff. It's all, so, to use a sort of British-ism, it's all mouth, no trousers.
Right.
Well, okay, so, no, I don't want to be incendiary about this, because it is beautiful. Like, the environments are very well made. The team that put them together is obviously both competent and passionate. Same thing with the noise, or the audio team, right?
Okay.
And the voice acting team, like, it's all very competent and slick, right? And, like, that is the point of this game. The mechanics are meh.
Okay.
Really? Okay, that's surprising.
Well, so when you say the mechanics, like, what aspect is something that stands out to you as a gameplay aspect that you're like, okay, I guess that's how we play the game?
Your companions are invisible.
Like, what? In the sense that they don't matter?
So you have companions that come with you at different points during the story, and you can have your companions stand right in front of a bad guy that can see, and they won't get seen.
Okay.
Now, right, I see what you mean. I think it went invisible to the viewer. I was like, that seems like an odd choice.
Invisible to the bad guys.
The convenient programming choice.
Sure, and let's be as charitable as we can be, because I played this for about 4 hours and went, I hate this, and set it down, and like I will probably never touch it again.
Okay.
But the Mistress of Giggles is playing it, and I'm sitting side saddle to watch part of it. So in the interest of being as charitable as I can be, it is possible that particular mechanical oversight is an option setting that is set in a way that I don't know of.
Okay.
Because I didn't watch the options get set. Like, there are a whole bunch of accessibility options in the game for the people who just want to experience the story.
Okay.
So you can dial down the how fatal the enemies are, and how...
Sure, I think that's very important for a game. Yeah.
Sure. So there's a bunch of accessibility settings, and it could be that just there's an accessibility setting for detectability of the companions. But I have not only seen video, but in watching the Mistress of Giggles play this game, watched companions just out in the middle of corridors for the whole world to see, and a bad guy who can see, because there are bad guys who can't see,
okay,
who detect things by sound, which is a kind of a cool mechanic the first time you encounter it. Like, that's kind of cool. But anyway, one of the zombie bad guys that can see is just right there, right? And nothing. Like, walked essentially right on top of the companion and didn't even notice.
Interesting.
Right? And this game is getting 10 out of 10s from pretty much every media outlet.
Well, of course,
I don't know how you miss that particular bit.
Well, so
the part, I'm a little annoyed by it, because again, to me, a game is a loose condition and a mechanic first, and all of the other stuff much later, or much less important, shall we say. And for something to have the primary mechanic of the core gameplay loop, right, which is stealth assassinating things,
okay,
and collecting stuff, so kind of Fallout in that way. I expected better for a game that was universally praised. Although, if you go and look at the reviews, nobody's talking about mechanics and everybody's talking about story and fluff.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, I was going to ask that too. Is like, is this more because of the story being told versus the game?
Yeah, almost entirely. Like, and I want to be charitable. I also want to be incendiary at the same time.
Okay.
Like,
so
I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna self-censor.
So I think that this game was okay. One of my favorite games of all time on PlayStation 4 was God of War. I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought it was such an amazing story. I thought the character development was just absolutely perfect. I really did. I am in love with God of War for PS4. The gameplay is also really enjoyable, even though it's fairly simple and a lot of mechanics. The customizability is fantastic, and so on. But the main thing is that you walk away from that feeling that you're part of a story and that you help develop a relationship between the father and son, right? And I know that Last of Us, the first one, is very similar in that sense. Not quite as good, in my opinion, but it's very similar in the sense that it's all about this story and this relationship. And Last of Us 2 had to do both, right? You really need to have the great story and everything, but it's still got to be a video game. You still got to actually not just have it as a interactive movie. It's got to actually have some enjoyable elements. And what I heard about The Last of Us 2 was mostly that it's a teenager simulator and about the relationships between the female character, I can't remember her name, and just her being angsty with everybody around her. And that is incredibly unappealing, because if this is supposed to be like a movie simulator, you gotta have interesting characters. You gotta have something good going on, as well as good gameplay. And if you don't have a good story, good gameplay can at least salvage it. You know, if the game's fun to play, you might go, whatever, skip the cutscenes kind of thing, right? But apparently, this has neither. Yet it's getting such good reviews. That's boggling my mind.
Well, so okay, I guess I am going to say this. LGBT representation apparently is worth about 11 points on a scale of 0 to 100.
I did not know they even had that. Well, who's
so?
Oh yeah,
the main character, from the way I've understood, gets represented as being a lesbian in this one. I'm not sure if is it bi.
It is lesbian tween angst.
Okay. And so I have seen
about the LGBT side.
Oh yeah, so I've seen commentary that people, because I have not played it, I don't have the reference for it, but basically stating that there were a lot of people that either really appreciated some of the representation of that relationship piece of the story, and some people who really found it something they did not appreciate, did not either associate with or find value to. And that a lot of times some of the commentary about the quality of everything was somewhat based on that, how they felt about that aspect of the game. I've heard a lot of discussions about that.
I can't comment on the game. I have not seen it. I'm commenting on the reviews that I've heard so far, right? I think LGBT representation in games has thus far been rather poor, right? There hasn't been much at all, really, that I can think of that comes to mind that has at least left any kind of impression on me. And so do I think it's important to have that kind of representation? Absolutely. Does that make it a good game? No, it means that they could be doing something good and it's a good aspect for it, but it doesn't in itself make it a good game. In fact, it's a lot stronger if there's a good game that also has LGBT, you know.
That's what I would prefer. I would prefer a mechanically solid game first, and then if the characters are the sexual preference of the characters is irrelevant to me.
To you, sure. But I think to a lot of people it is relevant. A lot of people do care because they feel like they can connect more with the characters.
Don't disagree with that point at all.
So I do think it's important.
Yeah, no, it is. I agree. 100% it's important. I agree with the assertion that the representation up to this point has not been great.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess pretty poor being polite. It's been god awful up to this point. Right? So there's room for it. Right?
Absolutely. It's a largely untouched marketplace, to be honest, and it should be done more because it's going to bring in
big time
people who are interested, right?
This is
absolutely very useful.
This is to me the culmination. Sorry, Wayne. I will.
Oh no, go ahead, please. No, please finish. Please finish.
But I don't want to forget this. This is to me the culmination of stuff that I have been talking about since I was writing for Tech Raptor, in which we have allowed the definition of game, and I mean we in the royal sense, like we everybody, have allowed the definition of game to have morphed to such a degree that I don't know. So I'll say it this way, where a game is going to be objectively looked at as a better game because of story and fluff rather than the core game mechanics. And the mechanically superior game is going to be looked at as worse, in air quotes, right? If we use aggregate review score as a measure of relative quality, the better game is going to be looked at as worse, or the mechanically superior game is going to be looked at as worse because games media is now looking at the other stuff, the fluff, the story and fluff, as the most important aspect of what makes a game, rather than the mechanics of it, which is what I think is the most important.
You know what?
The most important aspect of what makes a game.
I think games are are different for each person, right? I mean, I think if I went to a website that was called LGBT Gaming News and they gave this 20 out of 10, I wouldn't be surprised, right? That can make sense from their perspective that they really got that enjoyment and probably felt really represented by having a lesbian or gay character in this game. However, if you go to storyvideogames.com. I don't know if these are real websites. It might also give it like a 12 out of 10 or something. I don't know, depending if they saw the story as a good thing. But for us here, we've been gamers for most of our lives. For me, it's since the 90s, which was when I was born. For you guys, even longer, right? I mean, we've been gamers since forever. So our definition of what a video game is going to be very much different than what other people from various different groups within society think of as a video game, right? I mean, we can go back to, for me, it was like Sonic the Hedgehog and Sega Mega Drive games. I didn't see any LGBT representation of those games back in the day. I'm not saying that should or shouldn't have been, right? They were kids' games, and I don't know if I suppose you can still have LGBT representation in kids' games, but it wasn't a thing in the 90s. My point is that I don't think that this alone can make a game good in the eyes of everybody. I don't have a problem with some people saying that makes a game really good for them. That's fine. Who are we to say no to what they enjoy, right? To what other people enjoy. But for me personally, while I would get a kick out of enjoy, and I would feel like some sort of representation from seeing LGBT characters in some video games, I would also you don't want to be pandering, right? You also want a good video game. There's nothing worse than watching a film that has like my wife says this all the time. There's nothing worse than seeing a film which is supposed to be some empowering feminist film, and instead it's just pandering, right? You want the character to have faults. You want them to be real. If you feel like it's a Mary Sue character, it doesn't feel like a feminist piece. And it's like a feminist piece.
Yeah, don't misunderstand. This is definitely not that. I have never rooted for people to die so hard in my whole life.
Okay.
So,
well, like the actual villains or like the main characters?
Idea of the story.
Okay.
Or much of the story. Well, no, it's not fair to the people that haven't acquired it yet and who want to play it for the story. And by the way, that's the only reason to play it. Because you're not going to get anything out of the stealth assassinating, because yuck. The only character that I can think of that I did not want to see get executed at some point was when the trans kid shows up.
Okay.
The trans character too.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And he's only at the point at which I experienced his inclusion into the overall narrative. He's the only character that I was like, yeah, I actually don't want to see this kid die.
Okay.
It's him and his sister. And I guess the two of them. Like if those two characters don't die at some point, like I'll be okay with that. Everybody else, like I laughed really hard. I saw it was obviously a joke or a troll, but it was the good ending any percent speedrun world record of The Last of Us 2. And it was basically playing up until the point you control Abby and then throwing Abby off of a cliff. It's like Abby's dead, so can't ruin the game. Done.
Oh wow.
Okay.
She can't ruin the narrative
in
the story.
Gotcha.
Like again, there's been talk in the chat about comparables between The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last Jedi. And I'll say that I don't necessarily think that's the most accurate thing in the world, other than to say that I don't necessarily see the value of using subversion for subversion's sake. Like if you're going to try and subvert audience expectations and you go someplace with it, I'm totally on board. It's a totally useful narrative device.
Okay.
But to do it just for the sake of doing it, that I have a problem with, and there was a lot of that in TLJ, and I did not play the first one, so I can't really speak to how much of that there is in Last of Us Part 2, but these
Okay.
characters are all okay. The characters are awful people, right?
Gotcha.
The voice acting is fine to good, I guess. Um, one of the reviews for Last of Us 2 that I read made sure to name drop everybody to make sure that all the Critical Role fans like got in on get in on it to get some of those sales, like
Interesting.
name dropping people,
All the voice actors and stuff involved.
which I thought was kind of cute.
Yep.
But
So
yeah,
I'd like to refer back to something you said a few minutes ago because I don't trust the internet. You said that the characters you wanted to die. You're saying that because you didn't care about the characters because you feel they were poorly written, and you feel like that you didn't have any investment in the characters.
reprehensible.
Okay, so they were written in a way that made them not worthy of living in that world, in your viewpoint.
Yeah. So when I say things like that, I'm talking in kayfabe. Not that they're so badly written that it's like I wish I could just edit these characters out like Jar Jar Binks.
Gotcha.
No, it's much more of that these are morally reprehensible characters, and it's everybody.
Gotcha.
Right? So it's just like, can I make you walk in
There's-
front of a bus, and then can I make you walk in front of a bus? Oh
one of
wait,
those-
it's the post-apocalypse. There are no buses.
One of
so I
those
have to throw you
situations
off all things
where there's
to make
nobody
you
for
die.
you. There's nobody for you to rally behind, essentially, to feel good about. No one for you to root for.
No one.
Gotcha.
Absolutely no one.
Which I will tell you makes
it's
it
okay with having
hard.
flawed characters and even anti-heroes at times. Do you feel like they were just supposed to be written as good guys, but they're making actions that you disagree with?
No, I think it's subversion for the sake of subversion.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the trope in all of these stories is to have a hero, right? This is our escapism. So I want to be able to jump into somebody that I can relate to and idolize.
Okay.
Right? Like to use the comparison that we're talking about today, in Ghost of Tsushima, like I want the main character whose name is Jin Sakai, I think.
Okay.
That sounds right. I want Jin Sakai to succeed.
Okay.
Like I want to go and frickin' kill Mongols, right? Like I want to do that. I want to kill them in as many varied and creative ways as I can come up with.
Okay.
And like I really want to see this journey through to the end. And I don't want to do that in The Last of Us 2.
So even with the main heroine in it,
just drop a building on Abby and Dina in the first 3 hours and just call it a day. I could just be done with it.
Okay. So I appreciate you bringing that up because there's, and this kind of gets into discussion. There's a lot of people who are going to take from this game things that they specifically enjoy. I think part of one of your early points to the gameplay aspect of if you were trying to, in some way, create an objective scale based on what it means to play a game, there's a side discussion there to the point of the storytelling elements of it. Because I often say when people bring up the argument, one of the things I find a little closer to home is graphics versus gameplay as one of those elements, right? That in most cases, it's always like gameplay succeeds higher than graphics, right? You have a lot of examples of very simple games that don't have much graphics but are fun and great to play. Factorio was one we talked about before, Terraria, other games like that. They're honestly, the graphics are minimal.
Minecraft, yep.
But they provide such a great gaming experience. That in almost every one of the things we come up with, the gameplay aspects, what are you doing as a interfacing with this engine that provides you joy and showcases your skill and the things that you're performing that make it a game versus how the game is portrayed to you, what they're trying to present to you in addition to the skill aspect or whatever it is, decision-making capability, things like that they're asking of you as a player. And what's that value? Because when you're first talking about like the story elements, one of the things that always comes back to my mind, and I never played it, but I remember all the scuttle about it, was the old PS3 game Heavy Rain. That was basically all a cinematic story, somewhat interactive story, with very little gameplay kind of aspect. And it sounds like, because actually, as I was looking for video clips to show behind our discussion for Last of Us 2, most of the trailer things were all just story. And it finally came to a point where I actually saw some gameplay, which to me is telling in any kind of trailer situation, because I'm about playing the game.
Right?
What was it?
Gone Home would be another example.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right?
No,
It has no mechanics. It's you walk around this house, you can roll the end credits in 30 seconds if you want to.
Oh, wow.
And it's really exclusively about the narrative.
Gotcha.
And again, this, to me, the term game should be reserved to things with loose conditions or win conditions and mechanics.
Okay.
Which is not to say that something that's interactive but doesn't have those things isn't valuable, because it is. Right? And I don't want anybody who may this podcast who's never had an interaction with me before or doesn't know who I am, please don't misunderstand. If you really want to buy The Last of Us 2 to experience the story, by all means, do so and enjoy it. And if there's a lot of utility to be gained from the representation that's in it for you personally, by all means, support that. Buy it. Buy the game. I am giving you a fairly jaded perspective from somebody who really thinks that we could have nipped a lot of things in the bud 5 and 6 years ago when we were having a discussion of whether a walking simulator is in fact a game. And I came down on the side of we should call these things something else. They're extraordinarily valuable. A lot of talent and work and passion goes into these things, but to call them a game is to put an expectation into somebody's mind that is going to run the risk of them being disappointed at the end.
That's a really interesting viewpoint. That's a really interesting viewpoint, Todd. And do you think there should be like a separate definition between like interactive movies, perhaps, and video games?
Yes. I 100%. I think we should have come up with we should have come up with a name for those things. We should come up with a name for the HTML choose your own adventure books that people write in Twine.
Okay.
Right? They should be called something. And we should revere those things, and there should be an enthusiast media around them, and you can write whatever the hell you want to, and let the market for that stuff determine what gets pushed forward and what gets pushed to the wayside. Like I am in favor of all of that, because there's a lot of talent and a lot of creativity and a lot of passion that goes into all of these things. But if you're going to hand me a choose your own adventure book written in Twine and call it a game, like, I'm going to crap all over it, because I have an expectation of what is going to be happening, and I'm not getting it. And that's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth, especially if I pay disposable income on it.
Okay. But I guess part of the way I'm seeing this, because it's some of those discussions I've had way back to the days of, how you classify the term gamer. And this goes back to very specific discussions we've had way back and things that happened around those times I won't bring back up. But the idea of, is it okay perhaps to label in the very generic sense these things as games, where you get to make choices in how the progression occurs, and thus it is a game? Because I've said that gaming to the point of board gaming, to card gaming to all these other things that are still games in the aspect of we are playing and doing something like that, but that there should be a little more emphasis put on what subgenre of gaming each of these things are, so that when compared with other games that are better characterized, because we've had that discussion of who's gamers and such. Is mobile gaming an equivalent to say someone's a gamer to hardcore PC gaming and stuff like that? Where
my response to that, Wayne, is simply that being a gamer is a state of mind.
Okay.
And is not something that can be assigned or unassigned based on acts.
But with that mindset, that's where I kind of lends me to saying that I'm okay with Last of Us 2 being considered a game under the subcategory of interactive, like movie experience, right? Something like that.
Sure, and the last of I'm sorry, I probably skipped a bunch of steps. It's not. I'm not saying that The Last of Us 2 isn't a game. It very clearly meets my criteria for a game. It has mechanics, and there are definitely win or lose conditions. So it obviously is a game.
Okay.
What my problem is, or my criticism is that it is getting rated highly in spite of the lack of
mechanics, of
technical prowess and consistency of the mechanics.
Okay, and that's key.
Where I would consider a much more technically consistent and competent game like Ghost is getting downgraded because some reviewers don't like the fact that side quests are samey.
Gotcha. No, I think that's a great point to make sure we emphasize, because I didn't want people to get the wrong impression that you were somehow categorizing Last of Us 2 as not a game because of the focus on
no, it absolutely,
interactive storytelling.
Absolutely is. And I realize sometimes logically I skip steps. So well, no, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, because I think that it's important in the sense of like this, because it goes to how we take when we hear other people's experience with anything we observe, music, media of any kind, gaming, stuff like that, to understand the reference of what that person's projecting to let you better be informed as to whether you would have a similar experience with that same media. Because I'm not going to go to the classic country music fan to hear whether I should listen to the latest Eminem album, right?
Exactly.
Unless
the same thing.
Well, that's the thing. Unless I am specifically such a country music fan that I haven't experienced it, and therefore, if the person I trust for my music taste says, "Well, actually, you should check out this new Eminem album," even though you're a country music fan, then I'd be like, "What?" But in that sense, right? And so, if I'm looking for the next action stealth game, and that's my focus, based on what Todd has expressed, I'm going to look at Ghost of Tsushima versus Last of Us 2 as what's probably going to draw me, especially with the added bonus of me saying, I love samurai and Japanese culture things. So on top of the gameplay mechanics that I care about, that's going to give me what I'm after. Whereas if I was just looking for a stealth game, like you're saying, Todd, and I went to Last of Us 2, I may be disappointed because the actual thing I'm looking for in stealth mechanics isn't as robust or as well presented as some of these other games. So
I'm sure somebody's going to turn the difficulty on The Last of Us 2 all the way up to maximum and like try to do a speed run of it, and like that's going to turn into a thing, and like cheerio, like right on, like do what you do. But to me, having played it for a handful of hours, the correct way to play the game is to turn it on at very easy mode to make the combat as painless as possible. And the stealthy kill, the stealth kill combat bits as painless as possible, because quite frankly they are painful.
Okay. No, I think this has been a good conversation about two games that can be in some ways thrown into a similar category and have both come out recently. So it's good to kind of have an awareness of the differences, because I have absolutely heard those I've heard, especially for Last of Us 2, not having perceived it myself, but watching reactions from different people that I do follow about media and such. Love and hate is kind of how I've had pretty specifically, I've gotten very few responses that were middle ground. I've either had people who just found reasons to absolutely love the experience they had, and those who were so turned off by some aspect of the game that they just were like, nope, this is not for me. And so it's interesting for me to get some other perspectives or ways to help gauge why that might be. Because I never played Last of Us 1, but I've heard great things about the storytelling of it. And then going into this, I've been hearing this very, like I said, difference of opinions on it. Based on where I'm at in gaming right now, my background, I don't think I would pick up Last of Us 2, even if it were available on my preferred game platform, the PC. Whereas I'm annoyed that Ghost of Tsushima is not available on the PC right now, because I would likely pick it up immediately. Personal taste. As well as I was going to ask on that Ghost one, did you ever feel the being hampered by the fact that, from what I've heard, it only runs at 30 frames per second?
No.
Okay. Cool.
With all the effects that are going on, with falling leaves in the forest and blades of grass moving in the wind, which is the mechanical bit that we didn't really talk about. Like, you can find your way from place to place by using the wind. Like, the wind will blow in the general direction that you're supposed to go, and so there are leaves and things that kind of get picked up.
Beautiful way of implying destiny. I love that.
Yep, it's it is. I haven't played a stealth action game, open world, that good since ever.
Oh wow!
Because really, Metal Gear Solid and Tenchu Stealth Assassins, which is what I keep coming back to, those aren't open world.
No, they're pretty linear with minor arenas.
Well, and Tenchu is entirely linear. Like, they gave you a level, and there's each level has a map, right? But it's linear. It's not like there are side quests to go.
You're right. No, the actual story, what you're accomplishing, is goal oriented in a very linear path.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got you.
Good on you, Ken, for soliciting an email, because I'm going to get an earful after this.
That was Wayne, but yes, we're very
willing to hear.
Yeah, sorry, it's the show account, but that's Wayne. We're very willing to receive anybody else's opinions on these things as well. That's a good point, actually. Be it on your opinions of Last of Us or anything we've talked about today in general as well. Please do let us know your opinions, and if you agree, disagree, and what you guys have been up to in terms of video games and video games news as well. You can do so by emailing us at vtwshowx@gmail.com. That's all very much appreciated. Is there anything else we want to discuss before the end of the show? Anything you guys have been up to that's geeky? Anything outside of this?
I was going to say, for myself in general, I just, I've been kind of the games I've been playing with recently, because I spent some more time in the Call of Duty Warzone modes and had some good experiences recently with some people we've been running with in the VTW Discord group. Good times. Nice. I like that mechanic, and I just feel for the current genre of battle royales and first-person shooters that the Call of Duty one just fits what I'm used to, and so the mechanics fit, and so I've found myself coming back to it. I'm still playing a ton of ARAMs just because that's like my happy place, and it only gives me so much negative interaction with the good.
What's your opinion on the battle royale games?
In general,
generally
I've enjoyed the mechanic and the idea of them. It's a way to force a group into a multiplayer situation that has some level of understood amount of time that you're going to play with the progression. I mean, you may get knocked out right away, and it's interesting to me to have seen the changes of the genre as newer ones have come out, because the first ones that I experienced were like PUBG, and I'm trying to think some of the other ones that first came out before, like Fortnite and others, where it seems like every genre to have come out have refined things and come up with aspects they improved upon based on people's feedback. So I think one of the ones that was really great was Apex Legends, the one that's based on the the mech game one, that the same engine and world from, that they got some of the really good aspects of Battle Royale and refined it further to where I even see Call of Duty. I think their Warzone version is a step further along the path of ways that you don't die once and you're just out of the game, that you're able to be brought back in and stuff like that. I like that it provides a progressive, hey, the world's shrinking and we're forcing combat in doing this. You're going to at some point have to attack. And when you have a team that works together, I've found a lot of success. And even though I'm not necessarily winning every match type deal, the progress of playing the games to me is rewarding. And especially with teammates I know, because I like that, like in Call of Duty specific, you can play one person, 2, 3, or 4 people in a group, depending on who's available, and still have a good team aspect. And I've enjoyed aspects of that myself playing. So I like it. It's not something I'm investing enough time in to be my game of choice, but it's one of these great ones when I see other friends of mine who play that I like to play with in it. I'll jump in and be like, hey, what's up? And we'll do a match or two. And I'm just like, that's fun. Same thing with ARAMs. When I see Kenon in League of Legends, it's like, let's play an ARAM, man. And it's just good time just to play with people I know.
For that. I think that's it. You actually point on exactly what I was going to talk about, Wayne, for my reply to you, Todd, which is that I think Battle Royale is the new MOBA, right? MOBA was the cool new thing for a while. Before that, it was MMOs. Now it's the Battle Royale. I don't know what will come next. Who knows, really? I love the fact that we have this new genre that's welcoming a whole new generation of gamers. I think it's brilliant. A lot of people look down on it and like, oh, it's all Zoomers, all kids they're playing. Who cares?
That's just Fortnite.
We need more gamers. People should, the younger kids should be welcomed into gaming with open hands and you know, open arms, and that's what I'm doing. I think it's great because it is the kind of game you can just jump on and play. You don't need to have like a level 300 account or whatever for most of these. You can hop in and play with anybody. I love it. I think it's great. The mechanics are fun. It's simple. It's easy to grasp onto. I think it can be a little bit annoying if you jump in and die quickly, but you know, the fact that there's a game that punishes you for not playing well or being unlucky, that's just a game, right?
Well, but most of them have done a good job of letting you jump back into another match. So even if you do, it's like, that was 5 minutes. Let me start a new match and have a better opportunity to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good for having a quick game. I mean, like, that's the one thing that MOBA's really missed is that, you know, you couldn't just go in and have a quick game. You know, you ended up being like, I have to have an hour for one game just in case.
Sure.
And that's the one of the things that, you know, I think is the reason that MOBAs have sort of tapered off somewhat over the years. But just like MMOs, which still have their grip in their audience, and MOBAs still have their grip in their audience, I imagine Battle Royales will have the same for many years to come, even when the next generation comes. And that's not a bad thing either. What are your opinions, Todd? What do you think of Battle Royales?
Well, so I've only had the solo experience in Battle Royals, and they're fun enough, I guess. Yeah, I just it's my days as an FPS player of any relative skill, I think, are long past me. Because so I started playing more deliberate games, like World of Warships, as an example, which you know is a team-based game. Still multiplayer. There's a competitive variant, but it's much more deliberate. Like you can, you know, you have a ship that has 100,000 hit points at maximum tier and a full volley of shells from another top tier ship. May do at the maximum 30,000. Right, so at absolute, and this is if you're tactically like totally inept, tactically. So you're talking about being a 3-shot as a totally inept player versus being in a battle in, you know, a first-person shooter where you're only one competent sniper away from being dead.
Yep. I'd say that I agree with you, and I think you're. Although I have to say you are definitely missing the one main thing of Battle Royales, which is be able to jump on with buddies. I think playing together really adds a special element to the game because, you know, it adds that old. You know, it's like when you're back, you used to play COD with friends or whatever. Or I remember I used to play Crisis online with people and stuff as well. I love that. It's that special thing of like, okay, to your left, you're gonna, and with Battle Royals as well, you have the building elements in some games like Fortnite as well. So you're like, okay, you're gonna focus on defenses. I'm gonna focus on shooting them down. You can be the healer, and you know, you can jump around doing these roles. And you practice leadership and team development, and it's a lot of fun. I think you can have some really amusing times and create good memories with your friends through Battle Royals.
There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case. I'm a hermit by nature as it is, and even more so in gaming circles nowadays, probably to my detriment.
No, it's fair.
Part of that is. If you ever want to jump on and play some Fortnite, let me know.
Sure. No, tough. I mean, part of that is time difference, and part of that is being old and crotchety.
Hey, I've actually been impressed
I,
with
I,
some old gamers older than us picking up games like Warzone and Fortnite and stuff and their experience with it, and it's always interesting to me. But in that same way, Todd, if you ever want to try to check out some of the games that we're playing, I'm happy to, like Ken's saying, share that experience. Check them out.
Sure,
And
sure.
the nice thing about a
I'm
lot of the battle royales.
I'm always down to try something new, especially if I can do it with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the nice things about most of the battle royales, other than some specific ones, most of them are free, which is one of the really cool things. That you can at least get into the games for free. They do like most things where they offer non-essential payments for skins and things.
Oh yeah, that's a good model, and plus they're extreme. Like that's one of my favorite things about battle royale games. I should have mentioned, which is they are such big advocates of crossplay because they do not invest in a system. They invest in players having friends, seeing each other's skins, and wanting to make money from each buying each other's skins that they have, right? And so the more people you have playing, the better. So me playing on my Mac, some of my buddies are playing on Xbox, some are playing on PlayStation. But we all play together, and that's something we enjoy, and it makes the company more money. So they enjoy doing that too. So everybody out there, every games company, go do crossplay, makes you money.
Right?
Here.
God, crossplay across the board, absolutely. All right, but with that, and we can definitely have some more discussions about this. If anybody here, you heard anything we talked about today and think we might have missed something, and you have more to add to, like we said earlier, please email us. We'd love to hear from you. We like to showcase both what you're doing in the world of geek and gaming, but also your responses and thoughts on what we have been doing. So please do come in and email us. We'd love to hear from you. But Ken, if you could lead us out for the week, since it is time for us to let you guys all go back to your days and to enjoy your gaming and things like that, let's get out of here for today.
You have been listening to ShowX live on twitch.tv/VTWShowX. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow and turn on your notifications for us going live as well. If you want to take part in future shows, that's the easiest way to do it. You can also follow us on twitter.com/ShowX, twitter.com/DocDead, and twitter.com/DrKenReed for the show, for Mr. Wayne, for myself. Todd does not have a Twitter account at the moment, unless I can entice him back into that world again one day. You can also check us out on reddit.com/r/ShowX for the post-show discussion there. Please feel free to start the discussion there. That's much appreciated. Patreon.com/ShowX to support us financially. It is not into our pockets. It goes to Britain. It supports the show from there. So feel free to donate anything you can. It's $1 a month minimum, and that's very much appreciated. It keeps our software subscriptions and sometimes our hardware alive. You can also check us out on Facebook. Search for Show Space X without the space, but a space character in there, and you can find us there. That's where we do our updates and occasionally post memes and stuff as well. And of course, join our Discord. If you want instructions how to do that, just ask in the chat. Somebody will help you out just now. Otherwise, ask on Reddit or check the Reddit. It's got all the links there as well.
Or check the show notes. I always have it in there.
Thank you both so much for being on the show today, and thank you for hosting us, Wayne. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. So thank you guys both, and we will catch all of you guys again next week. We look forward to seeing you again. Bye, everybody. Have a good time.
Bye.
Goodbye. See you next zombie. Good night.